All right, let's dive into this. We're going deep on Sappho, way beyond that lesbian poet thing,
Yeah, I could go deeper.
You shared that PDF, great academic overview, but it really hit me. We've got such a tiny piece of her work left. It's like trying to read a, I don't know, water-damaged scroll or something.
It's true. We're talking fragments, mostly.
Oh.
Like single lines, maybe a few words here and there, quoted by other writers or...
Oh, this is wild. I read this. They find them on pottery shards.
Pottery shards. Yep. That's archaeology for you.
More like a treasure hunt than, serious literature stuff. But seriously, what can you even get from those tiny pieces?
You'd be surprised. Those fragments, along with some ancient commentaries, they actually let us kind of reconstruct Sappho's world, at least a little bit. We're talking Mytilene, on the island of Lesbos.
Mytilene. Okay, so not your typical Athens, right?
Yeah.
When I think ancient Greece, that's not what comes to mind.
Totally different vibe. Athens was all about, politics, philosophy. Lesbos had this whole lyrical tradition going on. Music, poetry, and a lot more social freedom, especially for women.
Which makes those recent discoveries, 2004, 2014, right, even more exciting. Every new fragment changes things.
Oh, totally. It's rewriting history, literally.
And speaking of rewriting narratives, we can't talk about Sappho without mentioning love and desire, especially those poems about women. There's that famous one, Fragment 31. She describes seeing the person she loves, and it's like her heart's racing, she can't speak.
Intense.
And so relatable, even now.
That's what makes her so amazing, right? She captures these raw emotions, these really visceral feelings with such incredible precision. And this wasn't just like reciting myths or praising the gods, which is what most ancient Greek poetry was doing. Sappho, she pioneered the lyric eye, writing from your own experience, which we totally take for granted in poetry now.
So she's basically changing how poetry works by focusing on her own feelings, on these really intimate personal moments. Makes you wonder who she thought was going to be reading this stuff. Did her audience get it like we do now?
Well, they think her main audience was other women.
Wow.
Yeah. Which, again, really unusual for the time. It suggests this close community, maybe even like a formal group of women, all learning about poetry, writing poetry together. Imagine that in ancient Greek salon, all these women talking about life, love, art.
That's such a cool image, this thriving community of women focused on art and intellect, especially back then. But it does make you wonder, how did the rest of ancient Greece see this? I mean, those Athenian gossips must have had a field day, a female poet writing about desire.
Oh, they did. Athenian comedy, they love to poke fun at people like Sappho. There's actually this one play, Curculus of Andros.
You can't just casually mention a play called Curculus of Andros and not tell us more.
Yeah.
Spill the tea. What did those Athenian jokesters find so scandalous about Sappho?
Well, let's just say it involves some pretty crude wordplay, basically connecting Sappho's supposed husband's name with a certain male anatomy. It's not exactly subtle, but it shows you, even back then, Sappho's work was causing a stir. People were debating her, arguing about her, especially her sexuality. There were even some scholars who thought there were two Sapphos.
Wait, two Sapphos?
Yeah. Like one was the brilliant poet, and the other was this symbol of, unrestrained desire. Like they couldn't be the same person.
It's almost like history can't handle a woman who's both brilliant and comfortable with desire.
Yeah.
As if those two things can't exist together.
It's a recurring theme for sure. But even when you ignore all the gossip and the attempts to put her in a box, Sappho's work is just undeniably powerful and beautiful. Even Plato was a fan, supposedly.
No way, Plato. That's saying something.
Right. He even called her the 10th Muse.
Which is huge praise coming from him.
Mm-hmm.
Plato had some pretty strong opinions about, what counted as real art and intellect.
Exactly. And the fact that he admired her so much tells you something important. Her work, it went beyond the social rules of her time. And it wasn't just the topics she wrote about, it was her language, too. She could take these really complex emotions and write about them in such a simple, vivid way. Her words just feel so immediate, so timeless.
You mentioned the Sapphic stanza before. For those of us who aren't, poetry experts, what makes that form so special, and how does it connect back to Sappho's own writing?
It's so cool. The Sapphic stanza, named after her, of course, has this very specific meter and structure, 3 longer lines and then a shorter 4th line. It creates this kind of tension and release, almost like the emotional intensity you see in her fragments.
So you've got these ancient Greek women listening to her recite these poems, feeling the rhythm of the words. It's almost like the language itself is echoing these deep human emotions.
Yeah.
No wonder her work has resonated for so long. You see her influence everywhere.
Oh, absolutely.
Catullus back in ancient Rome, Lord Byron, Sylvia Plath.
Even today.
And it's not even just direct imitation, right? It's something about how she taps into these universal experiences. Longing, loss, desire. It speaks to artists across time, across cultures.
It's amazing, like she gave people permission to write about those things just by doing it herself.
Yeah, she created this space for honesty, for vulnerability in art, which is still so inspiring. We see it in music, in painting. There are even operas about Sappho. This isn't just like dust-canoe poetry. It's vibrant. It's alive.
100%. Which makes it even more tragic that we've lost so much of it.
I know, right?
All we have are these little pieces, these glimpses into what must have been this incredible body of work.
It really is like we're putting together this puzzle, but like most of the pieces are missing.
Yeah.
And the ones we do have are just, wow. Makes you wonder what happened to the rest. Was it just, time? Or was there something more going on?
It's the question, isn't it? Everyone who gets into Sappho, it gets to them. And there's no simple answer. But there are some interesting theories. Some people point to just how fragile ancient texts were,
All right, scrolls fall apart, fires.
Exactly. Fires wipe out whole libraries. You could have earthquakes, wars. It's honestly amazing anything survived at all.
That's true. But then again, history can be kind of ruthless, Like sometimes the destruction feels intentional. Are there any hints that maybe Sappho's work was targeted on purpose?
It's definitely possible. Some scholars think that the rise of Christianity and, its stricter views on certain things, especially sexuality, might have played a role.
Yeah.
Imagine a world where Sappho's work, which is so open about desire, clashes with the new rules, the new norms.
Right.
It's not hard to imagine someone in power deciding her work was, how should we say, inappropriate.
Wow. Makes you wonder what other voices, what other stories we've lost that way.
Yeah.
If someone like Sappho could be silenced, what about everyone else, the artists and writers we don't even know about?
Exactly. A little scary to think about, but even with just these fragments, her impact is clear. Think about it. They've inspired so much art, so many different interpretations, even arguments about her life and work. That says something.
It's like, by trying to erase her, they accidentally made her even more important. All those people trying to silence her. And here we are, still talking about her, thousands of years later. It makes you wonder, what's the most surprising thing we might find if a complete collection of her work ever turned up?
Oh man, what would we find? Maybe a whole other side to her. Political poems, maybe? Thoughts on being a mother? Maybe even like philosophical essays about art?
Right.
Or maybe, just maybe, more of those incredibly personal poems that still resonate with us today. We can dream.
That's what I love about these deep dives. We start with a few little pieces, a few clues, and we end up on this journey through history, through art, through the human experience. Makes you appreciate those echoes of the past that we do have.
Yeah.
And maybe it makes you want to go find the rest of them too, right?
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe one of our listeners will be the one to dig up the next incredible piece of Sappho's world.